Angela Wright, a homeless janitor working in a Manhattan luxury high-rise, lives a life of quiet perseverance. But one day, when she grabs a little girl's hand on the street and claims her as her daughter, the world of millionaire Charles Whitman, the building's owner, fractures. What begins as a confrontation becomes a collision of two worlds: wealth and invisibility, grief and hope. She had scrubbed that marble floor so many times she could see her own reflection in it, not as a woman, but as a blur. Angela Wright, 32, hair tied back with a rubber band she found on the subway, pushed her mop across the lobby of Whitman Towers with the focus of someone who needed the hours. The badge on her uniform read, "Facilities Support," but no one ever asked her name. People rushed past her with pressed suits, lattes, and Bluetooth calls, like she was a pillar or a potted plant. She didn't mind. Not much. $15 an hour, no benefits, a rotating schedule. But it was honest. It was hers. And for Angela, that was enough, until the day it wasn't. By noon, the city was already humming with its usual chorus of honking, yelling, and promise. Angela finished her shift and stepped into the alley beside the service entrance, slipping out of her gloves and into the battered Toyota RAV4 that served as her home. A folded blanket, a lunchbox from Goodwill, a box of crayons, one pink sneaker, Lulu's. Angela opened the glove compartment and pulled out a faded photo, herself in a hospital gown, holding a tiny baby swaddled in pink. Lulu had been a whisper then. Now she was 5, sharp, curious, stubborn, and missing. Well, not exactly. She was with Miss Kara, a retired teacher who ran a shadow daycare from a soup kitchen uptown. It was only for a few hours. But those hours were like bricks stacked on Angela's chest. Every second she was apart from her daughter, she felt the edge of the world tremble. Across town, on the 50th floor of Whitman Enterprises, Charles Whitman stared at another photo, crisp, high resolution, framed in silver. His daughter Allison, aged 6, smile like spring, cheeks dusted with freckles. Gone 3 years now. A highway accident, a rainstorm, a moment too fast. She had vanished from his world like breath on glass, and still, he carried her photo in his coat pocket like a talisman. Like maybe she'd walk through the door one day and say, "Daddy, you're late again." He was late for everything now, except grief. That he met on time. That afternoon, Charles skipped a board meeting and wandered down Broadway. No bodyguards, no assistant, just a grieving father walking among the noise. His mind was elsewhere when he saw it. A flash of pink, a small backpack shaped like a doll's face, and the unmistakable wobble of tiny boots. The girl turned the corner before he could call out, but something gripped his spine. He followed. She was standing on the curb, alone, scanning the crowd like a child waiting to be found. Her curls bounced beneath a knit hat. Her coat was a little too big, but her stance was bold. Then came the voice. "Lulu!" Angela's scream cut through the air like glass. She dashed across the intersection, narrowly missing a cab, and knelt before the girl, wrapping her arms around her. "Don't do that again! You can't run off like that, baby." Charles slowed, frozen mid-step. His heart pounded. The girl, the eyes, the shape of her nose, the tilt of her chin. It was like Allison had returned in a different coat. "That's my daughter," Angela said, noticing Charles watching. Her tone wasn't hostile. It was maternal, defensive, protective. She stood, putting Lulu behind her, one hand gripping the child's wrist, the other still holding a rag from her pocket. Charles blinked. I'm sorry. She looked like someone. She's my daughter, Angela repeated louder, this time with steel. Pedestrians slowed. A man with earbuds paused. A woman clutched her purse a little tighter. There it was again, the unspoken math. Her uniform, her face, her claim. She looks exactly like... Charles started, but his voice caught. His world tilted again, just like it had the day Allison disappeared. "Sir, please," Angela said, her voice tight with warning. "We don't need trouble." Blue and red lights flashed across the sidewalk as a patrol car rolled to the curb. A bystander had called them, probably someone who saw a rich man and a black woman arguing over a child. The officer stepped out. "Is there a problem here?" Charles raised his hands. "No problem. I just thought I recognized the child." Angela turned, her jaw set. "I'm her mother. We're just leaving." The officer looked between them, then at Lulu, who clung to Angela's coat. "Ma'am, can I see some ID?" Angela pulled out her wallet, a tattered license. A city employee badge with Whitman Towers Janitorial stamped in black. Her hands shook. She didn't want to go back to a precinct. She didn't have the time. Lulu hadn't eaten lunch yet. The officer examined it, then turned to Charles. "And you, sir?" I'm Charles Whitman," he said. "Whitman Towers. I thought... Never mind." Angela reached into her coat and pulled out the hospital photo. Lulu, newborn. Her hand on the baby's chest, a bracelet with Angela's name visible. She unfolded another paper, a worn intake record from the now-shuttered Monroe Women's Shelter. Her name, Lulu's, dates, emergency contacts. The officer looked, nodded slowly, and stepped aside. But Charles wasn't moving. "She looks exactly like my daughter," he whispered. "She even walks like her." Angela's lips trembled. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said, softer this time. "But this is my child." He studied her then, not just her coat or shoes, but her eyes. The tremble beneath the resolve, the exhaustion buried under the instinct to protect. "I want to help," he said. Angela narrowed her eyes. "Help? I own the building where you work. I have resources. Let me at least make sure you're safe. Both of you." She almost laughed. "Safe? In your building, people don't even see me. You think safety comes with offers from men in suits? I'm not offering charity." "What are you offering?" He hesitated, then reached into his coat and pulled out a card. "Come to my office. Let's just talk." Angela looked at the card, then at Lulu, then back at the man whose eyes were filling with tears. "What's in your office that isn't here?" she asked. He took a breath. "Answers, I hope." Angela looked down at her daughter. Lulu gave her the smallest nod, the kind only a child gives when she senses something important is happening. And that was how the janitor from the basement of Whitman Towers and the man who built the skyline above it found themselves riding the same elevator. The elevator to the 50th floor whispered its way upward, too quiet for the weight it carried. Angela held Lulu close. The little girl rested her head against her mother's chest, thumb in her mouth. Her coat smelled like the morning's mop water and the chicken sandwich Angela couldn't finish. But her daughter didn't mind. She never did. Across from them stood Charles Whitman, tall, composed, but not as polished as his reputation suggested. His tie was loose, hair windblown from the street. He clutched the photo of Allison in his coat pocket, fingers trembling. When the doors slid open, the contrast hit hard. Cream-colored carpet, walnut-paneled walls, a gold-framed portrait of Charles shaking hands with a foreign diplomat. Everything gleamed. Angela stepped out like someone entering a museum where nothing could be touched. Lulu squeezed her hand tighter. A young assistant in a navy blue suit blinked twice when he saw Angela. "She's with me?" Charles said. The assistant nodded, awkwardly stepping aside as the janitor in worn sneakers and the billionaire in leather shoes walked side by side down the corridor. Inside his office, the air was different. Conditioned, soft, tinged with cologne and silence. Angela stood by the doorway, unsure whether to sit. "Please," Charles said, gesturing to the leather chair. She hesitated, then sat, carefully, as if the chair might reject her. Lulu climbed into her lap. "So," Angela began, her voice even, "what happens now? You ask me questions. Check if I'm lying." "I'm not here to accuse you," he replied. "I just need to understand." She nodded once. "Fine." There was a long pause. "Why didn't you ever come forward?" he asked. Angela inhaled slowly. "Because the world I live in doesn't come knocking on doors like this." Charles leaned forward. "That's not an answer." She looked him straight in the eye. "You lost a daughter. I'm sorry. I really am. But I almost lost mine a dozen times. To poverty, to shelters that get shut down, to waiting lists, to men who said they wanted to help. Every time I showed up asking for help, someone reminded me who they thought I was. A statistic, a burden, not a mother." Charles sat back, quiet. "I had no money, no permanent address. What was I supposed to say? 'Hi, I live in my car, but I swear I'm doing my best.'" He didn't reply. Angela lifted Lulu's chin and gently wiped some jam from her mouth with her sleeve. Her movements were slow, full of a practiced love. Charles studied them both. The same eyes, the same dimple on the right cheek when Lulu smiled. His thoughts were a storm. He pressed a button on his desk. "Get legal in here, and pull every public record we can find on Angela Wright and her daughter." Angela's shoulders stiffened. "I'm not trying to hurt you," Charles added quickly. "I need facts, the truth. This isn't just about resemblance." Angela nodded slowly. "I get it." 15 minutes later, a corporate attorney entered, wheeling a laptop. Thin, pale, and visibly uncomfortable at the sight of Angela's hoodie in this office of suits. "Her name is Angela Wright," Charles said. "She claims this girl is her biological daughter. Start with birth certificates, shelters, anything we can verify quickly." "Yes, sir." Angela reached into her bag and produced a manila envelope. Inside, Lulu's birth certificate, 2 photos, and a referral letter from a social worker named Melinda Ross. The lawyer took the envelope with gloved hands, as if truth might stain. Angela didn't flinch. While they waited, Lulu grew fidgety. Angela pulled out a sticker book, handed her a few crayons. She sat quietly on the floor, coloring flowers and rockets. That's when the door opened again. This time, it was a teenage intern, maybe 19, brown-skinned, nervous. I brought the files you asked for, sir." He tripped over the rug and dropped a folder, papers scattered. Angela leaned over and helped him gather them. "Hey, it's okay, breathe." He nodded, too flustered to speak. She handed the last sheet to him. "First weeks are the hardest. I know. I used to hide in the supply closet to cry." He stared at her. "You work here?" She smiled. Basement level, mop and bucket crew. He gave a shy grin and left. Charles had watched the exchange. "She's good with people," he muttered, almost to himself. Angela didn't respond. She wasn't here for praise. The lawyer returned 30 minutes later. Preliminary records confirm the match. Birth certificate lists Angela Wright as the mother. Hospital logs support the shelter documents. The intake from Monroe Shelter is authentic. Charles nodded slowly, exhaling. "So it's all real," he whispered. Angela looked at him, arms wrapped around her knees. "It's always been real." He stood and walked to the window. Manhattan sprawled beneath him, but it had never looked farther away. "I thought I'd never feel this again," he said. "Hope." Angela softened, just slightly. "Hope," she echoed, "is expensive when you're poor. Sometimes you can't afford to feel it." He turned around. His eyes glistened. "I owe you an apology. For how I looked at you, for not seeing you." She blinked. "You saw what the world trained you to see. I'm used to that." He stepped closer. "No, not this time." And then, in front of the woman with a mop callus on her palm and the girl with jam on her shirt, Charles Whitman dropped to one knee. "I'm sorry," he said. "Not just as a man, as a father." Angela didn't speak, but her hand trembled as it touched Lulu's curls. "I have a school," Charles said. "Private, best in the state. I'll get her in. Full ride, no strings. I'll set up housing, health care, and a job. If you want it. Something more." Angela frowned. "Why now?" "Because today, I saw my daughter in yours, and I realized the future I thought I'd buried might still be breathing." Angela stared at him a long time. Then she nodded. "One condition," she said. "Name it. You don't save me. We walk forward. Together. Equal." He stood, offered his hand. She shook it. And somewhere between the marble floor and the polished skyline, two broken hearts began to mend. The first time Angela Wright walked into Bellwood Academy, her shoes squeaked. Not because they were new. They weren't. They were the same thrifted pair she wore when cleaning the lobby of Whitman Towers, just scrubbed with baking soda and a toothbrush the night before. But in the echo of the school's marbled hallway, every step she took felt too loud. Portraits of smiling children in pressed uniforms lined the walls. Everything smelled like lemon polish and privilege. Lulu clutched her mother's hand. Her curls were freshly braided. Her pink backpack sat too low on her back, almost dragging, but her chin was lifted. Angela crouched to meet her eyes. "You belong here. Got it?" Lulu nodded. "I know, Mama." And Angela believed her. But the other parents didn't. Not all. She saw it in the sideways glances, in the pause before a greeting, in the way one mother's hand tightened around her pearl necklace when Angela entered the welcome reception in her modest blazer. "She's just the janitor," someone whispered. "Hein Whitman's pet project." But Angela didn't blink. She stood straighter, shook hands when offered, and when not, smiled anyway. Because she wasn't there for approval. She was there for her daughter. And Lulu, oh, Lulu thrived. She answered questions in class with her hand high and her eyes bright. She made friends with kids who had never seen inside a shelter. She taught one of them how to warm hands using breath and a paper towel, a trick learned on cold nights in the RAV-4. Teachers took notice. "Gifted," they said. Angela sat in the back of the first parent-teacher conference, gripping her pen too tightly, But when the counselor said, "Your daughter's empathy is off the charts," she cried for the first time in years, quietly, into her palm. Meanwhile, back at Whitman Enterprises, something unexpected had begun. Charles called it Project Hidden Values, an internal task force launched to identify overlooked talent in non-corporate roles. Janitors, cafeteria staff, security guards, drivers. The mission: find them, listen, elevate. Not for charity, for value. It started with one employee. Within weeks, it became a department. By the third month, national media caught on. From mop to microphone, the Angela Wright Initiative, one headline read. Angela was invited to speak at the Whitman Enterprises Diversity Summit. At first, she declined. "I'm not good with crowds," she told Charles. "You were good with me," he replied. The day of the event, she walked onto the stage in borrowed heels and a suit paid for by the company's HR budget. Not as a gift, they clarified, but an investment. She stood behind the podium with trembling hands, then reached down and lifted two objects, a mop and a photograph. "This mop," she began, "paid my daughter's meals, paid my pride, too. For a long time, it was the only thing between us and the streets." She held up the photo, baby Lulu, minutes old, against her chest. "And this? This is what I was fighting for." She paused. A long breath. You don't need to be someone important to do something important. But you do need someone to believe that you matter. For a long time, no one did. The room fell silent. Until one man listened. Not because I was loud, but because, for the first time, someone chose to hear me. She stepped back, and the room stood. Applause like thunder, tears like confession. Afterward, someone from the New York Times interviewed her in the hallway, then BBC, then NPR. "Do you think your story is unique?" they asked. Angela smiled. "No, I think it's just been invisible." Soon, other companies launched similar initiatives. "Find the Angelas," they said. But Angela knew the goal wasn't to find one woman. It was to see the people already standing in front of you. Back in Harlem, at the shelter where Angela once slept in her car, things changed too. Inspired by her story, volunteers returned. Literacy classes expanded. A language club opened. Lulu helped pick the name. Voices rising. Angela spent Saturdays there, now not as a client, but as a mentor. She helped mothers write resumes, brought donated suits, told them the truth, that it's okay to be tired, but not to give up. At Bellwood, Lulu's second-grade class elected her Speaker of the Week. She gave a talk about her hero. "She's my mom," she said, "because she's brave, and also, she makes really good peanut butter toast." The teacher cried. So did Charles, who had come to surprise them. But the world doesn't always cheer for rising people. There was pushback. A board member called Angela an exception, not a model. Another questioned the wisdom of turning janitors into heroes. Angela said nothing. She just kept showing up. At a gala 6 months later, a new plaque was unveiled at the entrance of Whitman Towers. Dedicated to the hidden workers whose hands build the foundation we stand on. At the bottom, inspired by Angela Wright. One crisp autumn day, Angela returned to the bench on Broadway where it had all started. Lulu sat beside her, legs swinging. On her other side, Charles Whitman, not in a suit, but in a hoodie and jeans. Just a father. Just a man. For a long time, they sat in silence. Birds chirped. A dog barked. A saxophone played somewhere in the distance. Then Charles whispered, "Thank you. You're the strongest mother I've ever met." Angela smiled. "You finally stopped seeing what I was," she said, "and started seeing who I am." He nodded. "I didn't give you anything," he said. "I just cleared the noise so the world could finally hear you." They sat like that for a while. 3 people, 1 bench, no titles, just heartbeats. Angela looked toward the street, where once she had run across traffic, clutching her daughter's hand in desperation. Now she watched Lulu giggle at a pigeon dancing in a puddle. "I used to think the world would never change," she said softly. Charles looked at her. "And now?" Angela smiled. "Now I know it can. One person at a time."